Hello. Today we will discuss on the parliamentary system of Pakistan. Now, the reason why I'm making this video will not go on to explain what parliamentary system of Pakistan is, but on whether the parliamentary system has taken a sacred stance and whether the system can be amended or changed in any manner. You see, what we need to understand is that recently, with the rising incompetence of the federal government and both present and past federal governments struggling with governance, it has become a bit of a what can I say, a fad that people of Pakistan have started wondering whether change in the system is needed. That whether if we change it from parliamentary system to a presidential system, the system may just effectively work. They cite examples of US, they cite examples of other countries, and they claim that presidential system will be an effective one. However, and for this purpose, we saw recently some Hum Watan party, some Hum Awam party filed a petition in the Supreme Court asking that a referendum must be held to decide whether a presidential system is needed for Pakistan or a parliamentary system is needed for Pakistan. This case was previously filed as well last year and it was dismissed. You see, the thing is, what we need to understand is, can this system be changed? Or is the parliamentary system so enshrined and so attached to the constitution and to our entire system, to our entire beings of the state, that it cannot be removed? You see, the answer for that is, and we must highlight that unfortunately the parliamentary system cannot be removed, and we're about to see how. You see, first thing we need to enact is, I'm going to talk a bit on the petition and take that path. You see, what they stated in the petition was that a referendum must be held, and secondly, that it is the power of 184 Article 184(3) must be used to allow for such a referendum, since the fundamental rights of the people are being violated in the system. Now, one of the first things we need to understand is that this is a legally flawed argument. It is extremely legally flawed, and here is why. Although the court is indeed empowered by Article 184(3) that it can declare changes in laws, it can declare suo motu power, it can declare that the government must do something or force the government to do something if it feels that there's an infringement of the fundamental rights of the people of Pakistan. However, calling for referendum is not part of the fundamental rights, because what Article 184(3) states is that it must work within the ambit of the fundamental rights enshrined within the Constitution, and nowhere in the Constitution is referendum a fundamental right. You see, you must understand what a fundamental right is. It is a right that you're born with. You see, you have the right to vote, and you have the right to form political parties, you have a right to actively participate in politics, but it is extremely stretching to state that you have the fundamental right to a referendum. You have a right to an election. You have a right to stand up in that election and be elected. But a referendum is not a fundamental right. You see, fundamental rights are those that you're born with: the right to speak your language, the right to your culture, the right to religion. These are the rights that are in you, that no other sovereign can take it from you. These are rights you're born with. A referendum is not that right. You see, it was in a pretty famous case. The Supreme Court declared, it was Imran Khan and others versus Election Commissioner of Pakistan, others. Its number is PLD 2013 SC 120, where the court held, and I quote, "Thus, in the light of the law laid down in the aforesaid cases, it is clear that this court, under Article 184(3) of the Constitution, not only has the jurisdiction to pass appropriate orders in the case involving questions of public importance with reference to the enforcement of fundamental rights guaranteed under the Constitution, but is also empowered to ensure fulfillment of the command of the Constitution of holding elections honestly, justly, fairly, and in accordance to the law." So here we see that the court decided that it must work within the ambit of the Constitution. You see, here it is stated that Article 184(3) has the jurisdiction to pass orders involving public importance and reference to enforcement of fundamental rights. And it pointed out that amongst those fundamental rights, it is also empowered to ensure fulfillment of them, like fulfillment of holding election. Holding an election is your fundamental right. It must be held honestly and justly and fairly. These are your fundamental rights. It is your right to vote. It is your right to an election. And it must be done fairly. That is a fundamental right. But a referendum is not. And one of the things that they talked about in the petition was to declare this system defunct, that the system has been broken down. The court cannot do that. The court is not empowered to do that because the court must work within the ambit of the constitution. To declare a system defunct is a supra-constitutional act. It is something that is far greater and powerful. The court can't do that. In fact, it is not even within the power of the parliament to do something like that, because the parliament is also a construction of the constitution. Both courts and parliament are constructions of the constitutions, and they cannot remove it. And here's, I'm going to highlight a bit on the referendum so that people can understand. Now, the referendum is not something that the Supreme Court is empowered to do. It is not its job. It is not empowered within it. The power rests solely with the parliament. That was until 18th Amendment. You see, what happened was that before that, the president could enact a referendum without going through the parliament by Article 96A, where it could ask the people's opinion on a yes or no question. Most of the time, the dictators did it so that they could secure their own power. 18th Amendment removed 96A and pointed to Article 48, Section 6, where it stated that the Prime Minister can hold a referendum on any matter of national importance that he may refer to the joint sitting, not to the Legislative Assembly, joint sitting where the Senate and the Legislative Assembly sit together. And upon this, he may bring forth his case for a referendum, and then if the Parliament allows it, then the referendum can be held. You see, on this basis, it was basically pointed out that through this way, the power of the executive will flow through the legislative. You see, we have the tripartite of powers, right? The separation of powers. So this was done to make sure that no dictator would ask the people directly and then fudge the results, so that a referendum will be done and then he will say that, all right, now I'm dictator for life. So this power was vested within the parliament. And it is not vested with the Supreme Court nor with the fundamental rights of the people. This is not a power within the fundamental rights. This is a very important thing. You see, upon this point, we need to understand a very important question. What is the nature of the system that is in Pakistan? What is this nature? This question actually came up within the courts. It came up within the 1980s, in the 70s. This was actually brought forth. An important question. And what we need to first of all look at is, what does the objectives resolution says? You see, the thing when I said that Pakistan cannot leave the parliamentary system, it's because it is enshrined at places in which the parliament has no power to amend or to change. Now, the founding fathers enshrined the parliamentary system within the famous objective resolution, and this was stated in the courts as well, where it was stated that it held wherein, in the objective resolution, wherein the state shall exercise its powers and authority through the chosen representatives of the people. You see, the court and many jurists interpreted those words that the executive power shall be vested with the chosen representatives of the people, not a single representative. Now, in a presidential system, the executive power is given to a single person, the president, that is directly elected. However, in a parliamentary system, the Westminster system that we have, the executive power is given to the parliament. You see, the one who has the executive power is basically the supreme power. So, upon this point, it was held that what they meant with the objective resolution was that there should be a parliamentary system. And those people will elect those representatives, and those representatives will be given with those powers and responsibilities, and those representatives will elect from amongst themselves a select few people like the president and prime minister who shall be given those powers. You see how the power flew? The people had the power, they elected a set of representatives and gave them the power, and then those representatives elected amongst themselves the president and a prime minister and gave them the power. You see, in the landmark case State versus Ziaur Rahman, PLD 1972 SC 49, this is a very important case. It was held that the resolution was the grounds for the constitutional framework of the country, that it will always have a strong impact on the constitution of the country, and it was stated that this resolution held the power of the people would be in the hands of the legislative assembly, along with a declaration that the court from a legal framework, and this is very important because this basically became the center backbone of everything, that the court born from a legal framework cannot declare that legal framework a defunct or abrogated entirely. You see, there's a bar on this. The Supreme Court cannot entertain a petition that says please remove 1973 Constitution of Pakistan and ask the government to make a new one. That can't be done. You see, now this resolution was made part of the Constitution of Article 2A, and the preamble of the Constitution basically resonates with the objectives resolution. The preamble of the Constitution of 1973 also enshrined parliamentary form of governance. It stated that do hereby, through our representatives in the National Assembly, adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. You see, it was done basically by the words that the people do hereby through our representatives. So what we can see here that again it is the word representatives being used, plural. So it is the same system that the people have the executive powers and they gave it to those representatives and they shall now elect amongst themselves, and those they shall give that those executive powers to those people. And a preamble is the soul of the constitution. It reveals the mindset of the framers, what they wanted to do, what they had, and it has a huge impact on the constitution. In fact, it can be highlighted that the constitution itself enshrined the parliamentary system. Now, as I stated before, that this question was brought forth into the courts. What kind of system do we have? And it was a very, very famous case at that time. It was Mahmud Khan Achakzai versus Federation of Pakistan. It was done in 1997. You see, PLD 1997 SC 426. It had a lot of constitutional questions within it, and one of the major questions was, what kind of system does Pakistan have, and what are the limits upon the parliament? Can it change the system? Can it abrogate the constitution? Can it remove Islam from Pakistan? Can it remove fundamental rights? What's the limit? You see, what the case defined was that the objective resolutions and the preamble of the constitution and what importance it holds within the constitutional framework of the country. You see, the courts decided in that case, in that very important case, that the structure of the country is based on parliamentary system, and it shall be parliamentary system blended with the provisions of Islam. This is what the court stated, that Pakistan shall have the Islamic parliamentary system. So you see, the question basically, one of the major questions of that case was that has the system been changed? Because at that time there was this presidential power, Article 58 2B, where the president could abrogate the assemblies. He could declare an emergency and remove the assemblies, and this is one of the major fights that happened in the 90s, political fights. So it was stated that if this article is being brought to back, then does that mean that Pakistan is no longer a parliamentary system but a presidential system? And if it is a presidential system, then did the parliament just change the entire system? Is it allowed? The court stated was that just because the president has been given the power to remove the legislative assemblies, the parliament, doesn't mean that this is a presidential system. That he has his own checks and balances, and this is fine. An executive power has been given to him, but major executive power is still with the parliament. The president is still answerable to the parliament. You see, what they stated was that in this form, it is a semi-presidential system, but it is nevertheless a parliamentary one, because they stated that many democracies have a president which can actually do something like this. And they held that no, the parliament is not empowered to change the parliamentary democracy, the system of the constitution, the basic structure of the constitution. It is not empowered to change the independence of judiciary. It is not empowered to change the federal nature of this state. Federalism meaning that there is a center and then there are provinces and there is autonomy amongst the provinces. You see, with this, they highlighted that there are limits and bars on the parliament, and the parliament cannot act outside of it. This was a very important case, and it basically answered that we shall be a parliamentary system. Now, an order of the Supreme Court is very powerful. Its job in the constitutional discussion and in constitutional explanation is equally important. Now, I'm going to talk about another case. You see, and this case was Sayyid Zafar Ali Shah and others versus General Pervez Musharraf and others. By then, General Pervez Musharraf had declared emergency in Pakistan and was basically the chief martial law administrator. Its number is PLD 2000 SC 869. Now, what this case did was it held the order. You see, by then, the difference was that by 1998, Nawaz Sharif was re-elected. By 1998, yes, 1997, 98, 98, Nawaz Sharif was in power, and through a 13th amendment, it had removed the power of the president to abrogate the assemblies. Musharraf had brought it back. Now, with this, there was a case filed that whether he had actually changed the entire structure and whether General Pervez Musharraf has the power to do something like this, that he may bring a presidential system. Does he have this power? And if not, does the parliament? This question was again brought. And the court again held that in the Mahmood Khan Achakzai case, that we had highlighted that there are limits on the parliament, there are bars on the parliament, and the state shall always be a parliamentary system. And the legislative cannot change the basic structure of the constitution, that it is a creation of the constitution, just like the courts, and neither can the courts nor the parliament can change the basic structure. So, in fact, in the most recent of all cases, the PLD 2013 SC1, it was again held that the government structure is a parliament and it cannot be changed. It was again pointed out to this. The reason we need to understand is because when we talk about change the system, we need to understand that the system is now ironed in. Changing it is next to impossible unless we do something far more treasonous and far more, what can I say, anti-constitutional. So rather than giving, so this is a very important question for all of us, because not just lawyers, the people of Pakistan also need to understand that the parliamentary system is now basically enshrined in the constitution. We can't amend the objective resolution. Changing the objective resolution would set a precedent where many other provisions of the objective resolution would be changed. The objective resolution, the preamble, the basic structure of the constitution, these can't be amended like that. So we all of us must ensure to work together and work within the system so that we can bring an appropriate change from within. The reason why I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to disparage, but the point is that these orders, these precedents that have been set, these are now ironed in. The system will be a parliamentary one. And you know what, when somebody says change the system, they must understand what they are saying, and they must understand how strong the parliamentary system is within Pakistan and why is it so powerful. So on this, I would like to end the video, and I would like to thank all of you. And if you would like to leave a comment or leave a like if you like the video, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. And for that, thank you very much.